Shocking revelation, the Good Samaritan faced an unbelievable test of faith. Few knew what truly happened that night in the dust-choked road leading from Jerusalem to Jericho. The moon hung low and large, casting eerie shadows over the desolate path where danger lurked in every shadows. Travelers whispered of bandits, a night of peace transformed into a canvas painted with fear. In the midst of this peril, a man lay crumpled, bloodied and beaten, forgotten by society. This was no ordinary incident. No, it was a time of turmoil, a clash of morals and destinies. The air buzzed with tension, crackling like static just before a storm. The ancient land, steeped in the blood of countless struggles, witnessed an unexpected twist. The priest, cloaked in authority, passed without pause, his mind wrestling with the law. The Levite too, overwhelmed by apathy, stepped aside, a callousness that echoed through the silence like a mournful wail, and then, like a whisper amid chaos, the Samaritan appeared. A figure often scorned, he approached with a heart racing and a gut instinct urging him forward. Could he defy expectation? As he knelt beside the wretched man, he felt the tension shift, shadows murmuring around him. The moonlight illuminated a moment of reckoning. Compassion battled prejudice, as the Samaritan poured oil on the wounded man's sores, the warm glow of hope flickering in the cold night. But was the risk too great? As he tended to the bleeding stranger, the ground trembled beneath him. Could unseen eyes be watching? Was this act of kindness the catalyst for his own destruction? Those questions hung heavy in the air, endless echoes vibrating through the darkness. In a world looking for reason and rationality, this moment burned brightly, blurring lines between friend and foe, safety and danger. What would it cost to save a life? Would he be rewarded or punished for defying the norms of his culture? The weight of history, prejudice, and compassion pressed down on him, leaving everyone wondering, what would happen next? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the Samaritan knelt in the dust, the weight of the decision loomed larger than the night itself. The wounded man's eyes fluttered, a faint glimmer of consciousness amidst the chaos. The Samaritan hesitated for a heartbeat, feeling the pulse of fear intertwined with hope. Around him, the shadows seemed to deepen, encapsulating this fragile moment between duty and disobedience. What drives you to help? A whisper escaped from the ether, nearly indistinguishable from the rustling leaves. The question hung in the air, a testament to the unseen forces circling, perhaps questioning the motives behind this act of kindness. The Samaritan's heart raced. He understood that help, in his world, was an invitation to vulnerability. He might be shunned for extending his hand to a fellow man, especially one so different from himself. As he continued to tend to the wounds, the air thickened with more than just the scent of oil and blood. It seemed to carry stories of old tales of betrayal, of walls built between nations, of scorn laden in the hearts of those denied mercy. These threads of history wove around the Samaritan as if to remind him of who he was beneath the cloak of night. Yet, he felt a strange warmth igniting within him, a connection to the wounded man that defied the boundaries set by society. The darkness curled around them like a protective shroud, and he wondered, in that stillness, if perhaps this was meant to be. The law had its presence in the distance, hushed, judgmental, insistent. Yet here, where compassion grew bold, did the law have room to breathe? Could mercy, in its purest form, be stronger than tradition? The world had taught him to fear this man. Could it also teach him to embrace him? The journey that led him here was laden with scars of its own. Many would call him foolhardy for approaching a man left for dead, a stranger of a different lineage. But the Samaritan felt a burgeoning conviction, perhaps that very fear fueled his resolve. He saw not a label but a brother, a fellow traveler caught in the turmoil of life's road. The bond that formed in that moment transcended all boundaries, a flicker of understanding wrapped in the fragile veil of humanity. As he secured the wounds with strips of cloth torn from his own garment, a weight lifted. Hope stirred, not just for the man but within him. The specter of people's judgments loomed large. Would they see this for what it was, a sacred moment, or would they twist it into a narrative of betrayal? Suddenly, a distant commotion sent a shiver down his spine. The sounds were becoming clearer, voices approaching, laughter layered with malevolence. Bandits! The fallen man's life surged within him, a child's cry for safety in a world painted cruelly. What would happen if he were discovered, if he continued to breach the chasm of societal expectation? Would they laugh at his foolishness, or would they recognize an unexpected truth lurking beneath his actions? With urgency, he lifted the wounded man and placed him over his own shoulder, steadying him against the groan of the night. Taking a deep breath, the Samaritan prepared to face whatever lay ahead, steeling himself against the inevitable confrontation. His heart sang with a wild mix of courage and fear, an unsettling harmony drawing him forward. What awaited him on this path, redemption or ruin? As the shadows loomed ever larger, a question lingered in the air, echoing through the night: was it worth risking everything for one lost soul? The path ahead twisted sharply as the Samaritan moved cautiously, the weight of the wounded man pressing heavily against his back. Each step resonated with the echoes of uncertainty, the night air thick with both danger and a profound sense of purpose. As he progressed, the sounds of revelry from the approaching bandits shifted into a menacing cadence, taunting him with the prospect of discovery. In the darkness, he felt the pull of two worlds, the one that celebrated self-preservation and the one that celebrated sacrifice. The bandits' laughter filled the void, a stark reminder of the danger that loomed just beyond the flickering edge of compassion. The Samaritan's heart pounded to an ancient rhythm, steeped in folklore and the tales of his ancestors. Stories had long painted the Samaritan as an outcast, yet he found himself embodying a narrative that broke all molds. Who is this man to be so worthy of such risk? A voice echoed within, grappling with the reality that helping this stranger was, perhaps, a rebellion against everything he had been taught. In that moment, he realized the magnitude of his actions, the choice to defy the expectations tied to his lineage and tribe. Was there a greater call at play, an unseen tapestry weaving together the lives of all who walked the earth, drawing even the most disparate souls into a divine narrative? As he pressed on, each footfall whispered a truth, helping others demanded something of the heart that transcended fear. But the little voice within him questioned, what if it leads to ruin? What if your acts of love become your downfall? The doubt grazed against the sacred resolve he had kindled, each beat of his heart a defiance against the tightening grip of anxiety. Just as he reached the bend in the road, a flicker of light broke through the canopy of trees, a fire burning bright, illuminating the faces of those gathered. The banter among the bandits faded momentarily as the distinct figure of their leader came into view. The Samaritan paused, pondering the impending encounter. Was this man merely an accessory in the brutal game of survival, or could he, too, be swept into the quest for redemption? In that charged moment, the darkness shifted around him, drowning the landscape in shadow and tension. Gritting his teeth, the Samaritan drew closer, feeling the weight of the heroic in the mundane, vulnerability in the act of care, and uncertainty brewing like a storm within. He had faced many struggles in his life, but never one that compelled him to reckon with the consequences of his moral stand in such a visceral way. He could sense the bandits' noses flaring, their primal instincts honing in on the scent of an outsider, a gauzy thread amid the ferocious tapestry of sin and camaraderie. As if sensing a change in the air, the leader turned sharply, his eyes scanning the surroundings. Something was at play, an awareness tinged with suspicion, as if the very earth underfoot had rumbled with revelation. With each blink of the flames, the Samaritan's resolve solidified. He could not turn back now, not when his heart cried out for justice, not just for the wounded man, but for humility itself. The old stories burrowed deeper under his skin, demandingly illuminating the transformative potential of love, an unyielding force that could shift horizons, heal wounds, and tear down walls. Could this love expand beyond the individual heart, forcing society to reconsider the bonds that tethered them in fear? As he stepped forward, self-assured but trembling, another question blossomed in his mind. what price must one pay for the sake of unity in a fractured world? As the Samaritan cautiously approached the flickering light, the laughter of the bandits gave way to a more sober silence, as if the air itself had thickened with expectation. The fire crackled and danced, casting eerie shadows that morphed and shifted, much like the tumult within him. He knew that each moment was laden with the weight of choice, and as the bandits warmed themselves in the small circle, he sensed the pivotal nature of this encounter not just for the wounded man he carried, but for all who inhabited that moment. The bandit leader, cloaked in a faded authority, stood tall, exuding an aura of command that put the Samaritan on edge. There was something unsettling about his presence, a blend of charisma and danger. What haunted the leader's past? Did he, too, wrestle with the ghosts of his choices? The question flickered within the Samaritan's mind as he weighed the essence of humanity shared between them, however distant it seemed. Hesitation hung in the air, thick as the night itself, and the Samaritan's heart pounded louder, propelling him forward. Suddenly, one bandit broke from the circle, wandering closer, his sharp eyes scanning for anything out of place. The Samaritan's hand instinctively tightened around the burden on his back, a protective gesture that battled his instinct for self-preservation. Here he stood, at the threshold of defiance, tangled between fear and faith. Who goes there? The bandit barked, his tone caustic yet laced with curiosity. The globe of fire illuminated the man's features, revealing a heavy brow and scarred lips, remnants of a life chosen by harsh realities. In that moment, the Samaritan understood the bandit was not merely an adversary but a soul shaped by hurt and hunger, searching for solace in a lawless existence. A wave of compassion surged within him, watering the seeds of empathy that had once lain dormant. As the bandit leaned in, his curiosity giving way to suspicion, the Samaritan met his gaze with an unyielding determination. He could no longer view this encounter simply as a disruption in his plan. It was an opportunity to bridge a chasm that lay between human hearts. "I come seeking aid for a wounded man," he declared, his voice steady yet softened by vulnerability. "A man who once was, like you, capable of both great joy and deep sorrow." The bandits exchanged glances, a tapestry of reactions that revealed a kaleidoscope of intrigue, amusement, and unspoken fear. Still holding an air of caution, the leader edged closer to the Samaritan, drawing a knife that glinted menacingly in the firelight. "And why should we help a man who openly mingles with weakness? Does he not deserve the fate he carries? But what defines weakness?" The Samaritan breathed, words spilling from his heart as if the very essence of truth had propelled them forward. "Is it merely the wounds we bear, or also our inability to rise beyond them? In seeking to heal another, we may find our own salvation." For a moment, silence cloaked the gathering, drawing the attention of the other bandits who turned their gazes toward the Samaritan with an air of contemplation. Within that pause, a flicker of something deeper emerged, the convergence of lives and stories woven together through the simplicity of vulnerability. The bandit leader's grip on his weapon slackened ever so slightly, as if the weight of the Samaritan's words had stirred something long buried within. Yet, just as a breath of hope seemed to weave through the air, his brow furrowed once more, catching the conflict brewing within. "You speak of compassion," he pressed, lips curling in a sardonic smile. "But how can we trust it? It could be a ruse, a way to awaken the fools within us." The Samaritan's heart raced as the tension heightened, thoughts swirling wildly. "Trust may be a fragile thing," he replied, "yet it is through the act of grace that we begin to unite our fractured paths. Can we reject the opportunity to rise above our differences, or will we allow the fear of vulnerability to seal our fates forever?" A stillness fell, punctuated only by the crackling of the fire, as the bandits exchanged glances again, uncertainty dancing in their eyes. In those moments, the Samaritan felt the profound weight of possibility, the air thick with the promise of connection that hovered just out of reach. Questions loomed in the air, unanswered yet brimming with potential. Could compassion pave a way through animosity? What if faith was not a destination, but the transformative journey itself? And could a simple act of kindness bear the strength to alter the course of all their lives? With the fire's glow flickering against the backdrop of the night, the moment had become charged with a tension that demanded resolution. The bandit leader, momentarily caught in the web spun by the Samaritan's words, appeared to waver. Yet, like the wind, the perceptible change was but a fleeting breath, and his resolve began to solidify into steel. "What you propose is noble, Samaritan," the leader replied, the knife still loosely grasped in his fist. "But know this, the world runs on strength. You offer mercy in a land where it is a currency none can afford. If we are to spare the life of your wounded man, what will you reward us in return? What promise can you give that your show of faith is not simply a strategy to protect your skin?" The Samaritan felt the weight of the leader's gaze, a blend of suspicion and curiosity that pierced deeper than any blade. He thought of the wounded man on his back, suspended between life and death, and understood that his response could either seal the man's fate or grant him a second chance. "The only reward I offer is the chance for us all to be changed," he insisted, fighting to suppress the tremor in his voice. "To watch our shadows merge into something greater, rather than remain isolated in bitterness." From the periphery of the circle, one young bandit stepped forward, seeming to sense the currents shifting around him. His face bore the hardness of one familiar with the cruel hand of life, yet beneath it lay an innocence untouched by the darkness surrounding them. "What if we are not worthy of such a change?" he questioned, a sliver of fear punctuating his words. "How can we embrace a future that has never been ours?" The Samaritan's heart ached as he recognized the weight of despair that had shaped the young man's life. "We are all unworthy in our own ways," he replied earnestly. "What matters is our choice in every moment. Even the thorns of our past can lead us to bloom anew, if we dare to cultivate them with hope." The leader sneered, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his fierce gaze. His hand slowly lowered, the knife resting now against his thigh, as if he were weighing the weight of his own life's choices. "And suppose we take this chance," he muttered, barely above a whisper. "What if we fail? What if your path to mercy leads us deeper into despair instead of salvation? Then let our hearts speak to each other in the depths of our failures," the Samaritan urged, earnestness steeped in every word. "For it is through the chains of our brokenness that we shall find strength to rise. There is no true path to redemption without facing the demons within." Murmurs broke out amongst the bandit group. Doubt warred with nascent hope, and the night seemed to pause, holding its breath as if anticipating the decisions of these men. The flickering shadows projected their pasts onto the ground, a dance of failure and dreams, pain and forgiveness intertwined, yet the leader, despite being caught in the undertow of change, pulled back purposefully. "Your words are honeyed, Samaritan," he said, a guarded resolve returning to his tone, "but sweetness alone cannot sustain a man in this wilderness we call home. What assurance can you give if we take you at your word?" As silence descended again, the air thick with tension, the Samaritan realized there was no guarantee, only the promise of vulnerability willing to beckon forth new beginnings. He drew a deep breath, prepared to lay himself bare before these strangers whose lives had become so intricately intertwined with his own in just a matter of moments. "That I know not how to guarantee your trust," he confessed quietly, "but I stand here, willing to risk everything. For even as I crave mercy for another, I recognize that we are all but echoes of one another. None of us flourish alone." Just then, a low groan emerged from the man's burden on his back, a faint reminder of the palpable connection binding their destinies. The bandits paused, glancing at the Samaritan with renewed curiosity laced with a hint of compassion, an unseen thread sewing their stories together. One moment at a time. As the firelight flickered, the question echoed quietly in the depths of the night: what if the courage to embrace vulnerability was the key to their freedom, and what bonds would form if they chose to walk the uncertain path toward possibility together? The stillness of the night echoed as the murmurs among the bandits dwindled. Each heart was a fortress of its own, yet there lay a crack in the wall, so longing to be set free from the cycles of pain. The leader's brow furrowed as he weighed the Samaritan's sincerity against the hardened realities of his life. Glimmers of doubt turned into shimmering questions. "What then?" he asked, voice heavy with the burden of his doubt. "We stand on the precipice of something unknown. What do we do with the lives we have led? How do we reconcile our past with the mercy you offer?" The young bandit who had spoken before stepped forward again, his eyes reflecting a flicker of hope. "Can a man truly change? Or does he simply churn in the same ancient waters, repeating the sorrows of his lineage? I've grown in the shadows, surrounded by fire and darkness. How do I step into the light? With a gentle resolve, the Samaritan inhaled the crisp night air, his heart resonating with the unspoken fears of these men. You find the light by taking a step, no matter how small. Sometimes, it is the very act of stepping that illuminates the path ahead. Each of you carries the scars of your past. They are not chains, but marks of survival. Embrace them as part of your journey. The leader looked past the Samaritan into the flames, his thoughts igniting the embers of a long-forgotten dream. We were once men of honor, or so we like to believe, he said, his voice cracking as he recalled the ethos of a life before the shadows overtook him. But honor plays no role in this land anymore. It is survival that rules us now. The gathered bandits listened intently, some glancing at one another, contemplating the fractals of their own stories. Can we reclaim what has been stripped away? The young bandit whispered, the vulnerability unmistakable in his tone. Or are we forever lost? The Samaritan placed a hand over his heart, feeling a kinship with these battlegrounds of despair. Reclamation begins in the heart, he said, his voice steady. Each choice you make to be more than your past unearths the possibility of a new beginning. I offer not a promise of safety, but a call to courage in the face of uncertainty. As the fire crackled, the air thick with the scent of opportunities yet unspoken, a shift began to resonate among the bandits. The grip of their lives started to loosen, as if the chains that bound them were whispering tales of fates not yet sealed. Yet, the leader remained distant, his internal battle still raging. What if this path leads us to nothing but more suffering? What if we cannot rise, but instead fall deeper? His voice was strained, a reflection of a soul still trapped in despair's hold. The Samaritan sought the leader's eyes, his own gaze unwavering. The fear of falling can paralyze you, or it can propel you upward with newfound strength. Keep in mind, even the tallest trees have roots that stretch deep into the earth, sourcing sustenance from the brokenness around them. What if your fall is merely a chance to discover a new earth beneath the surface? There was a thick silence as the truth of his words settled in. They stood at a crossroads, tethered not by certainty, but by the haunting allure of possibility. As the stars twinkled overhead, like unseen witnesses to the unfolding drama, the question lingered, what if the way forward lay buried within the strength of their collective vulnerability, waiting for a single act of courage to unleash its power? The gentle breeze carried whispers of transformation through the air, weaving around the gathered men like a silent invitation. The flames flickered, casting shadows that danced against their faces, marking the contours of doubt, hope, and the forging of newfound resolve. As silence enveloped them, the leader wrestled with the weight of his spirit, caught between the haunting melody of his past and the faint echo of a future he dared not envision. What if we raise our voices in chorus, only to find we are met with nothing but the silence of our own empty souls? The leader's question slithered through the night, its bitterness a reminder of all that had been lost. Yet deep within, a yearning stirred, one that echoed the weary voices of all the mighty souls who had walked through despair from prophets to kings, each grappling with their choices. In silence, we may find answers that words cannot voice, the Samaritan replied, finding a unique solace within the turmoil. Sometimes the loudest cries for change come not from our lips, but from the very depths of our hearts yearning to be heard. His gaze drifted toward the horizon where the sky met the land, reminding them that even the darkest night bows to the dawn. The young bandit, emboldened by his earlier vulnerability, spoke anew. What shall we do if we hold on to our fears as children clutch their toys? Can we truly let go, or will we grasp tightly at shadows, afraid of what lies beyond the darkness? Courage is not the absence of fear, the Samaritan said, embers of wisdom weaving through his dialogue, but the resolve to confront it. By giving voice to your fears, you shatter their power. He turned fully toward the bandits, the light from the fire illuminating the resolve that burned brighter within him. Consider the fate of a seed, buried in darkness, it must break apart before blooming into a flower. Change demands a sacrifice, but what you may gain could be a garden of unimaginable beauty. As murmurs of contemplation filled the space, the leader's gaze fell to the flames, a flicker of old memories wrestling with the new ideas taking root within him. You speak of gardens, yet our hands are stained with the earth of desolation. Can we plant new seeds in soil tainted by our past? The Samaritan met the challenge with thoughtful grace. Soil can be redeemed, it is the gardener's care that breathes life into what seems barren. Each moment you choose to nurture hope over despair, you cultivate the ground for new beginnings. You may feel unworthy, but redemption does not demand perfection, it asks only for the willingness to try. That message sifted through the group, fragile and tentative, but visible nonetheless like the first hints of light at dawn. Still, the leader pressed on, his brow furrowing with concern. What if we take that step only to realize the ground has shifted beneath us? What if the seeds we plant yield thorns instead of blossoms? Consider this, the Samaritan responded, his voice steadying like the cadence of a well-worn song. The heart that fears failure is also the heart that knows the truth of resilience. Just as thorns protect budding flowers, so too does adversity shape our character. The journey toward change is fraught with uncertainty, but could it not also be adorned with grace? A ripple of understanding cascaded through the bandits, igniting the embers of their own strength. They lifted their eyes, seeking courage in one another's reflections. Yet, the leader remained conflicted, wrestling with chains still rattling in his heart. What if my fear keeps me from planting at all? What if courage feels like a burden rather than a blessing? As the Samaritan observed this turmoil, a profound stillness overcame the group, pregnant with potential yet laced with fear. In grappling with this choice, know you are not alone, we carry our fears together. And indeed, your fear may serve as a catalyst. What if it serves to sharpen your resolve instead of diminish it? In that pause, as the stars continued to shine above, the question lingered, a haunting reminder of possibilities untapped. What richness might unfold if this band of weary souls chose to embrace their fears and step into the uncharted paths of faith? As the embers settled into a tranquil glow and the gentle night stole softly around them, the trepidation that hung heavily in the air spoke volumes. Among those gathered, a dark shadow moved silently at the edge of their gathering. It was a figure who had been watching unseen and unheard their exchange of faith, fear, and hope. The Samaritan felt the shift before he saw the figure, a tremor running through his heart as he turned to face the intruder. "Who goes there?" he called out, his voice steady despite the uncertainty that washed over him. From the darkness emerged a woman shrouded in a tattered cloak, her features obscured yet her presence undeniable. There was an ethereal quality to her, as if she bore a weight that transcended earthly burdens. "I am but a traveler," she spoke, her voice a soft hymn against the night. "But I come with a question that may shatter the reflection you seek." She hesitated, the flicker of the fire casting shadows that danced across her worn face, revealing a story of hardship and longing. The leader, entranced by her presence, took a step forward. "Then speak your truth, for we are wrestling with our own fears and the shadows that they bring." The woman nodded slightly, her gaze sweeping over each of them. "What if the garden you hope to cultivate is not merely a symbol of redemption, but also an invitation to profound sacrifice? What if, to nourish what is new, you must first confront the despair within?" An uneasy silence enveloped the group once more as her words settled like a dense fog, challenging the flickering light of their newfound resolve. The young bandit spoke, his voice trembling. "Are you suggesting we must choose pain to gain strength? Must we tread the thorns in order to find the blossoms?" "Pain has a language that the heart understands," she said, her eyes glinting with a wisdom that seemed both familiar and foreign. "It teaches you the depth of your own spirit, much like darkness reveals the brilliance of the stars. Sometimes, what you bury in the soil is not just a seed, but your very soul. How willing are you to unearth it?" The leader felt a cavern open inside of him, resonating with the echoes of unconfessed sorrows. What if the weight of our past is too great to bear? Can we really uncover the beauty without being consumed by grief? The woman's gaze pierced through him, unfaltering. Each soul must carry its own history. In confronting that weight, you find community, shared burdens, and the strength that comes from vulnerability. Will you cling to the safety of your shadows or risk stepping into a light whose warmth you have yet to feel? As her words lingered, the bandits exchanged knowing glances, anxieties mingling with flickers of understanding. Fear lay heavy like the cloak of the woman before them, yet somewhere in its folds, glimmered hope. The Samaritan, feeling a deep pull toward the mystery that gripped the leader, posed a question of his own: and what if in shedding our burdens, we find ourselves facing even greater trials ahead? What if this light leads us into unknown darkness rather than warmth? The woman took a step closer, the fire reflecting off her eyes. That is the nature of fate. It is not the certainty of the path ahead, but the courage to walk it. Every step toward transformation bears witness to the divine in your midst. Fear may grow in the shadow of doubt, but faith can also flourish there. What will you choose? In that moment, the weight of potential hung heavy in the air, each person ensnared in their own thoughts. The possibility of a new beginning lay tantalizingly close, yet the fear of the unknown loomed larger than ever. As the starlit sky twinkled with an enigmatic promise, one thought echoed unrelentingly: what could be revealed if one dared to lift the veil of fear and tread into the realm of faith? The night deepened, wrapping the gathering in a shroud of stillness, the only sounds being the whispers of the wind and the crackling of embers. The woman stood firm, a pillar of quiet strength amidst the swirling anxiety of those gathered. Each heart wrestled with the gravity of her words, absorbing the resonance of a truth that felt both daunting and profound. "Let me tell you a story," she began, her voice weaving through the silence like a gentle breeze. "In a land not so far from here, a farmer once tilled his soil with hope and despair intertwined. He planted seeds with care, even as drought threatened to choke his dreams. The land became parched, and despair turned to bitterness as he watched his labor wither. Yet, instead of surrendering, he turned his gaze inward." The listeners leaned closer, wrapped by her narrative, their own shadows flickering in the fire's glow. He uncovered the roots of his anger and sorrow, drawing them towards the light. By confronting his own desolation, he found the strength to break the cycle of despair. In his confrontation, he realized that only by acknowledging his own pain could he tend to the seeds of possibility buried within. The leader's brow furrowed at her words. "But what if we fear that the act of digging brings forth not seeds of hope but the remnants of our past failures?" The woman's expression softened. "Fear is an inevitable companion on the path of growth. Like thorns on a vine, it can entangle you or prompt you to guard your heart. Yet, within those thorns lies the lesson of perseverance." Every trial he encountered became a stepping stone. His faith grew, nourished by the bittersweet understanding of his journey's reality. In that moment, a shared sense of recognition washed over the bandits. They had each faced their own tangled vines, yet they had also felt the stirrings of something greater in their midst, a longing for transformation. The Samaritan looked at the woman, emboldened by his own yearning for change. "So our painful histories don't have to bind us, they can also free us?" "Indeed," she affirmed, her eyes glimmering like stars. "The transformation is not a denial of your past, but an integration of it. It is the dance of the light and shadow within you. The more you embrace your trials, the more powerful your faith can become. Reflect on this: how might your past illuminate your present path rather than darken it?" A silence fell upon the gathering as they contemplated her words. The fire continued to crackle, yet the air was thick with anticipation, as if the night itself held its breath, waiting. "What if," whispered the young bandit, uncertainty lacing his tone, "what if lifting this weight leaves us unguarded, vulnerable to even greater pain? Is that not a risk we must weigh carefully?" The woman regarded him steady, her presence both grounding and expansive. "Risk is an inherent part of faith. It is the willingness to step into the unknown, to let go of the familiar chains that bind you. Trust that, within every hardship, lies the seed of comfort. Restoration comes not from avoiding pain, but through the wisdom gained by confronting it. What fruit do you envision growing from your courage to seek light?" As the stars twinkled above, the question hung in the air, both unnerving and inviting. Each person felt the pull toward a decision, the choice to remain in the familiar shadows or to journey into the uncertain glow of faith. The cold night wrapped around them, and yet within, embers of hope began to flicker brighter. What awaited them on this path, still shrouded in mystery, resonated in each heart, awakening an unquenchable curiosity. What if this journey, as daunting as it seemed, could lead them to the transformation they sought? What revelations awaited them beyond their fears? As the night wore on, the embers of the fire cast a warm glow, illuminating the faces of the weary bandits and the resolute Samaritan. The woman stood among them, a silent sentinel of hope, her words having ignited a longing for transformation within the hearts gathered in that moment. Uncertainty mingled with resolve, creating a palpable tension that soared into the darkened sky above. The young bandit finally broke the silence, his voice barely above a whisper. So we confront our past, acknowledging the pain that dwells within. But what if our histories, still fresh like open wounds, teach us only shame? The Samaritan felt the weight of those words settle into the air like a shroud. Shame can often bind us tighter than chains, he replied gently. Yet it may also serve as a catalyst. By embracing our scars, we elevate ourselves into vessels of compassion rather than mere shadows of our choices. What if it is our vulnerability that connects us on a fundamental level? Each bandit cast glances at one another, reflections of fear, doubt, and a tentative flicker of hope bending the edges of their hardened hearts. The leader, emboldened by this moment of candor, stepped forth, his brow furrowed with a tumult of thoughts. And what lies beyond the recognition of our failures? Can mere acknowledgement suffice to forge a new destiny? Am I not branded by every choice made? The woman turned her steady gaze upon him, as if searching the depths of his soul. To recognize is the first step, dear leader, but to forgive yourself is essential. It is in self-forgiveness that we begin to reclaim our power. The power to choose differently, to nurture the light within, no matter how fractured it may seem right now. The morning is born from the darkest night, just as new beginnings arise from pain. A hushed murmur of acknowledgement rippled through the bandits, their postures hinting at the magnitude of her words. One of them, a rough-looking man with deep lines carved upon his face, turned his gaze toward the night sky, the lustrous stars twinkling like distant promises. But what if we fear the dawn? What if the brightness of a new day exposes wounds we dare not reveal? The Samaritan spoke, his voice finding a firmness within. Ah, but beauty lies in the dawn, it is where your essence can shimmer anew. Risk may lead you into light, yet true power grows not from avoiding fear but from braving it together. Imagine the strength of a united heart exuding warmth, tenderness replacing hardness. Can we not embrace each other's burdens as a means toward healing? The murmurs swelled once more, growing louder in strength and resolve. The leader, emboldened by the Samaritan's words, raised his chin and slowly addressed his brothers. Perhaps this is our moment not simply to speak of change but to embark upon the road towards it. What if we, too, dare to unearth ourselves from the very dirt we cling to? As these words hung in the cool night air, a palpable shift happened within the circle. Vulnerability began to shimmer through walls that once felt unyielding. The weary hearts of the bandits opened for the first time as laughter mingled with tears. They felt the possibility thrill within them. These men, who once viewed one another only through a lens of conflict, began to recognize shared humanity, but, as swiftly as courage filled the air, uncertainty clawed at them again. But the risk? What if our fate is to falter once more? Can we truly become who we wish to be? Asked the young bandit, his amber eyes alight with fear. Ah, the woman responded softly, this journey speaks not of perfection but of progress. To fail may be a part of the path, but after every stumble lies a lesson that can carve wisdom into your being. Rise, fall, rise again, that is the melody of growth. If others witness your struggle and yet find themselves inspired by your resilience, you have served a purpose beyond yourself. Your worth is never lost. The stillness that followed found the men gazing at one another with a newfound tenderness. They began to understand, transformations were not solitary acts but rather woven together by authenticity and trust, unearthing the beauty in their shared scars. Then, let us begin anew, the leader declared, the conviction in his voice echoing through the darkness. Let us not merely speak of change, but rise together in purpose. Let us gather what we have left and forge a path of resilience. The fire crackled in approval as a sense of purpose enveloped them. Here, nestled in the dust-choked road leading from Jericho to Jerusalem, they forged a bond reflecting the virtues of embracing vulnerability and the promise of second chances. As the surrounding shadows stretched long, the group drew closer, hands clasping together, forming an unwavering circle of trust. At that moment, the incomprehensible shimmer of possibility settled like a soft robe upon their shoulders. This gathering of lost souls, once torn apart by bitterness, now intertwined by hope, sat there under the watchful eye of the moon. They understood, their destinies were no longer solitary threads but a unique tapestry of grace, woven intricately through their stories. As dawn approached, painting the horizon with the colors of a new day, each man felt the stirring of something deeper, a reawakening that began not just in the land beneath their feet, but in the souls that soared toward the heavens above. What began as fear, loss, and isolation blossomed into a collective embrace of faith, a testament to the unyielding strength of compassion. And as the sun pierced the horizon, casting its light upon the faces of these transformed men, they discovered the profound truth that echoed through eternity: in every soul lies the potential for renewal, and in every heart is the capacity to love. Fear can either suffocate or unveil the divine purpose that binds us all. It is through the journey of the heart that we find our true selves, united not just by blood or history, but by the indomitable spirit of shared humanity. As the first light of day illuminated their path forward, the Samaritan smiled. He understood now that the ultimate test was not to transform others but rather to embrace the interplay between fear and faith, and in that harmony discovered the essence of what it means to truly live.